Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness.
This is episode 108.
Welcome back to the Let's Be Well Together podcast. It's Elise Seifert, and today I'm joined with Sheila Webster.
Hi, Elise. What's on your mind?
Well, Sheila, I was hoping that we could talk some more about the benefits of reading.
Yes, because the last time we talked about the mental benefits of reading, which were plentiful. So now what are we going to talk about?
Well, today I was hoping we could talk about how reading also helps to support your social well-being and your intellectual well-being.
Interesting. I didn't think that it would help that much in my social, because I feel like it's a real individual thing that you do for yourself. So how does it help socially?
Well, I also was surprised to hear that it can help socially. So I was looking at an article called The Benefits of Reading Books, How It Can Positively Affect Your Life. This is from healthline.com, and it was written by Rebecca Joy Stanborough, published on October 15th, 2019. And in the article, she spoke about how reading books actually helps you to become more empathetic, which is something I never really considered.
No, but that is very true. I do feel more empathetic, and I also feel like I don't like to judge people, like judge a book by its cover type of thing, because when I'm reading these books, all these people have issues, right? And you're like, wow, their life is so much more complicated than mine, or their problems are so much bigger than mine, you know? And I definitely agree that I am more empathetic to everyone I meet.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that helps about books is that they give you kind of an inner dialogue into a character's life. So it really allows you to almost walk in their shoes.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay. So I guess it does help socially.
Yeah. So while it may not help socially in terms of you talking with people or building relationships with people, it helps to build those essential social skills, such as empathy.
Cool.
So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
And then another facet of wellness that's really affected by reading is intellectual wellness.
Right. And of course, that's the number one, I think, benefit of reading.
Definitely.
Right?
When I think about reading, I think about how good it is for your brain.
Yeah. Gets my mind working, just reading the words, learning new words, getting a better vocabulary when I'm listening, because I like to listen with the audio app, which we're talking about, and Elise likes the e-reader type app. So those both, you get the new words that you're listening to, the new vocabulary, or I love to try and use that word in a sentence if I can when I'm talking to other people.
Oh, it's so important to use that vocabulary. I know when I had been teaching abroad in South Korea, I was teaching English as a second language. I felt like my vocabulary almost reduced because I was using fewer words. Just so that I knew I was being understood. So I felt like I was losing my vocabulary.
Yes, especially the elaborate words, right?
Yeah.
Like a plethora of, like I read that and I'm like, oh, a plethora, instead of saying a lot or more, right? Oh, a plethora of ideas. Yeah, because you can't, when you're teaching English as a second language, you have to do the basic for them to understand.
So you use the most limited vocabulary. So yes, I find that, and I think when I was in university and I was reading the most, that's when my vocabulary was at its strongest.
Yes, definitely.
So going back to reading, I think is really helping to enhance my vocabulary, which is one of the points from the article.
Okay.
Another point from the article that helps to enhance intellectual health is that there were actually MRI studies performed that showed reading physically strengthens your brain.
Really? Wow.
So undergoing the MRI, they could see that readers were physically strengthening their brain as opposed to people who were not reading, which in turn helps to reduce age-related cognitive diseases.
I mean, if it's improving your brain, then I can imagine how it can reduce these diseases or help reduce the diseases. But wow, I didn't realize that reading. Now, I wonder if the way I'm reading,
by using audiobooks rather than reading a physical book or an e-reader.
I wonder if they actually spoke about that or mentioned anything, the difference between the two. But I do feel like I'm definitely using my brain for sure by it reading to me. Sometimes I feel like I'm actually following along. Like I can see the words in my mind while they're speaking them, you know, so I feel like I'm reading along with them, while they're reading.
Of course.
Yeah, but that's really interesting. And that's totally cool because that's not why I read, but it's so nice to have that intellectual benefit.
I think no matter how you're reading, you're still making connections within your brain and kind of building those brain waves. So to me, I mean, I'm not a professional, but to me, I would think that in any form, you're really helping to strengthen your brain.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. And I know the article talks about what to read.
Oh.
And it just says, read what you're interested in. And I love that.
Yes.
Because I know when I would think about reading, I would often think, okay, I have to read the classics, War and Peace. And
yes. And actually, I have read some classics since joining Libby, which is the library app, and reading books. I have actually started reading some of the classics. So I have read Pride and Prejudice. I've read Les Mis. I haven't read War and Peace, but maybe I should. But yes, I do find that they're awesome too, but you do need to be in a certain kind of frame of mind. They're not light. They're not easy readers. So you tend to read them slower. So when I was listening to them, I had to do a chapter and then stop, let my brain kind of focus or get it all in and then start again. So that's a difference.
And I think there was a time in my life where I was really trying to read those classics and then I would get completely discouraged from reading.
Yes.
So now I think I'm better at just putting down a book and saying, you know what, this book is not for me. And that's okay. I'm still going to get the benefits from reading by reading books that interest me.
I agree with you. You'll read more if it's more interesting for you. But I have a funny story. I had a friend of mine when I was in high school, and she was an avid reader. And we would, in September, find out what her reading list was. And I didn't enjoy reading in high school because I felt like you were always on a timeline. Like you had to get this chapter done. You had to get that chapter done. And she said to me that she pre-read all the books in the summer. I know. I didn't even think that was something that you could do. She said that she'd go online and figure out what the reading was expected. And she would pre-read them so she could read them at her own speed and her own time so she could enjoy them. And at the time I was kind of like, what? Enjoy them? Like who enjoys reading in high school? But now I completely understand what she was saying. I would have so much more enjoyed my high school experience reading if I could have enjoyed the actual reading itself. So I think that's so important to read what you enjoy. Read at your own speed.
Yeah. And it's okay to say no to books that aren't for you. So for us, we found a hobby that really includes so many benefits, including intellectual, social, and mental well-being. And I'm curious to know what other hobbies are out there that also include some great benefits.
Yeah, we have to go look, I guess, read up on them.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the category of balance. For well over a decade, Ben Flanagan has pursued a dream, let's call it a destiny, to represent Canada in the Olympics in the sport he loves, distance running. And I theorize that he's passed up opportunities and made trade-offs along the way in pursuit of that dream. And today I get to explore that thought. So welcome, Ben.
Thanks, John. I'm stoked to be here. Thanks for having me.
Many people know Ben as one of Canada's best road running and distance running athletes. He's accomplished much. In 2018, Ben won the NCAA national title in the 10,000 meters running for Michigan, blazing past a respected adversary in an incredible finish. And he won the prestigious Falmouth Classic 3 times. He runs with On Running, and he's the current Canadian record holder in the 5 kilometer and 10 kilometer road race, and I could go on and on. I know Ben in another way. He's my nephew, and I've enjoyed watching him run over the years, especially because I've seen the ups and downs along the way. No one achieves what Ben achieved without facing significant challenges and setbacks, and it makes the successes that much more special. Ben is married to Hannah, and they love spending time with their dogs, Norm and Paris. So Ben, I've already hogged the mic too long, but I need to hog it a bit longer to provide some context. Regular listeners know that I have a theory and approach to wellness and balance. I've identified 8 areas of wellness that are important to me, and I think about the activities that foster wellness in each area. And then I check in from time to time, especially when I'm feeling off. And some of my check-in questions include, what will help me feel fulfilled over the course of my lifetime? What will I regret doing or not doing? So later in life, when I look back, what will I think about in terms of what I accomplished and what things I gave up on? I think about balance over the course of a lifetime and not at one point in time. And in my book, Accidentally Well, I give the following example of a person who trades off some categories at periods of their life to accomplish a dream. Think about athletes who dream of competing in the Olympics. They must devote themselves to their sports for years. They focus on activities within the physical, mental, spiritual, maybe intellectual areas, and that helps them achieve their goal, while economic, social, and maybe other areas of wellness take a back seat. How else can they achieve the highest level of performance? The quest to become an Olympic athlete fulfills them, so trading off some categories for a period of time makes sense. And I'm hoping to explore these concepts with you, Ben. So let me start by just asking, when did you know that you wanted to kind of take this road, to give it everything you've got, to take running to the limits?
That's a good question. I would say the journey began pretty early in terms of the idea of my ability and having the ability to make it to the Olympics, and that started back in high school when I finally found a sport or anything that I was naturally good at, something that came easier to me compared to others. And because I had such great support and mentorship, I set goals, one of them being to represent Canada in general at that age of 16 years old at World Championships. And once I made my first Canadian team, I guess kind of almost like a little bit of naivete, I thought that just automatically set me up for, okay, well, I'm going to go to the Olympics. I'm on Team Canada now at 16 years old. What's the difference being on Team Canada when I'm in my 20s? From there, I took the right steps to prepare myself to get to that point. But my college experience was quite a roller coaster. A lot of injuries. My progress was pretty slow relative to the rest of my career. And that was the moment where everyone told me my whole life that I had what it took to be an Olympian. And some of that was, from people who really know what it takes, and others that, they just think that because I was good at something. And it wasn't until I graduated from college and won NCAAs, putting up an accolade that actually made me feel like I belonged in another class of athletes, where I thought like, hey, you know what, I might have a shot at this and I want to go all in. And that's when I pursued signing a contract and starting a professional career to ultimately make it to the Olympics.
There must have been a lot of people in that, say, 16-year-old or whatever that age group was, Team Canada, all thinking the same things. And were you seeing other people develop around the same time as you? At some point, you must have seen that it's a dream, but it's a dream that not everybody gets.
Yeah, that is where it starts, right? And I remember being on that national team at 16 years old, and there were seminars about, the Olympics, the focus of, where the Olympics was in 2022, 2024. So they wanted you to have that idea in your head that, this is the track you're on. And I was around plenty of athletes that were much better than me that aren't in the sport today for a variety of reasons, right? Whether it be injuries, lack of passion, didn't want to do it anymore, found other interests. So what I've noticed is, this ladder, I guess I've been climbing, which is high school success, college success, professional success, and then the last one being international success. You just start to be one of the few standing, I guess. And I don't mean to say that out of arrogance or anything like that, but there was athletes that were way better than me, people that I thought were, locks for Olympics that don't do it anymore. And you realize just how many opportunities there are to get off that path or lose that track for whatever reason.
Let me call that off ramps. So let's say there's this highway that you're on, and part of me thinks that if you have that dream, you're just going gangbusters and you're going on that highway and you kind of don't even have time to worry about the other options. So let me ask you about off ramps. So let's say there are these off ramps on the road. You're going along on this dream, but you could go off and do something else, maybe a career option or a family option or something else. If you think about that analogy, do you think that you just didn't see the off ramps, or you just kept seeing them and passing them by?
Probably a little bit of both. For example, when I went to school at the University of Michigan, I didn't even realize once I committed there how good of a school it is. And I was basically going there to be a track and field athlete. I had good guidance from my parents who told me to focus on my studies and, pick my major that I was interested in, but something that would set me up for the future as well. But I really was kind of following those instructions to the bare minimum. I picked a major that was like, okay, yeah, I like this, whatever. At the end of the day, I'm here to practice, to race, and to compete at the best of my ability. So the college experience, I don't think I took advantage of, the educational opportunities there. Definitely didn't take advantage of the social opportunities there because, at a college system that can conflict with high performance athletics quite a bit for some people. And then as I got older, I guess maybe I saw the off ramps a little bit more clearly. And that's when I deliberately chose to stay on the path. And from there, it's easy to stay on it when things are going well. But when things are not going well, that's when you start to second guess that decision.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. We don't have to go through all the exact setbacks, but you must have experienced some, whether it be injuries or maybe you just missed a time by a whisker or you missed a finish by a whisker. What happened in those situations? So 2 things. How did you work through it? And then secondly, you just pointed out that maybe that's the time where the off-ramps look a little more attractive. So how did you keep on track at that point?
For sure. All of those setbacks I've experienced. The entire checklist has been done, right? Major injuries, the most notable are stress fractures, injuries that just knock you out for months, bone injuries. Another one is just lack of progress, where you feel like you're dialed in completely and you're doing all the right things, but you're just not seeing the output. The performance isn't getting better or not at the rate that you're expecting. And then the biggest disappointment in terms of missing out was missing out on the Tokyo Olympics. I was the first athlete not selected for the 5,000 meter. And up until 2 weeks before the decision was made, I thought I was going to be on that team. So all of them you have to work through in similar ways. The biggest one is time, giving yourself patience and time to get over it for whatever reason or recover from it. But the most important one is taking away the lessons from them. And it's okay, what didn't go right in this situation? For injuries, how did I get injured, right? Like, let's backtrack a little bit and make sure that I solve these problems so it doesn't happen again. And the disappointment of making it in the Olympics, it's important to just make sure that's not like the Olympics doesn't owe you anything, right? Like the spot was never mine. And when I didn't make it, it felt like that opportunity was taken from me, but it wasn't. And I had to learn like, okay, how can I set myself up to earn this spot and secure it and protect it rather than get as close as possible and leave the vulnerability of letting it slip in the last few weeks. So those are the main things. And in terms of the closest off ramp I ever took was the near conclusion of my first contract, which was with Reebok. It was a 3-year deal, which most of those contracts coincide with Olympic cycles. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to get another contract. And that's when I started a part-time job. I started doing a bunch of things to prepare myself for a potential off-ramp away from the sport and into a career, or at least a step into the career so it could help sustain my running passion if I wanted to continue to do it.
It sounds to me what you're saying, though, is it wasn't that it was attractive. It was that you were facing a reality. You were going to take that off-ramp if you had to, but you still wanted to stay on track if you could find a new sponsor, a new contract.
100%. And that's what happened. And it really wasn't appealing to me to transition out of the sport. And honestly, the bottom line probably was if I didn't re-sign, I wanted to have a source of income so I could at least, continue to run through the next Olympics. It sounds like a transition out of sport, but really it probably was just hanging on to it by a thread and making it work in a less ideal way. So fortunately, I had a couple great races leading into the conclusion of my Reebok contract that impressed on. And I signed with them the day after my Reebok contract ended, and I've been with them ever since.
Well, that's fantastic. And then just to switch gears a bit, you can see looking at my kind of wheel, these different areas of wellness that I've identified as important to me. It's obviously not an approach everybody has. You already mentioned, for example, that when you were at Michigan, maybe you didn't do as much socializing as other people did because you were busy. When you look back, or even now, do you see that you're putting some of your areas of wellness on the sideline to pursue this dream because you have to focus on some areas? Or is it just that you're so focused on these areas you don't notice others?
Yeah, probably a bit of both. there is some level of balance that I feel like I need to stay grounded. And that's helped me a lot in the more recent years of my contract. Right out of college, I was all in and I was willing to do anything to run at the best of my ability. And as I've gotten older, naturally, there's been things that I've had to just make sure I focus on in my life in addition to my running. That being said, the areas that I've chosen to, I guess, postpone would probably be, maybe the intellectual area of balance. I guess I do stimulate it in some ways related to running, but there's one day I see myself being very passionate about something else, making an impact in a different industry. And that's not something I prepare for regularly because I'm focused on my running and my recovering. Outside that, the one that's probably most noticeable, and I guess is a version of social as well, is just time spent with my family. Ever since I went to school, I was the first kid in my family to leave home. Both my sisters lived at home through college, left to a different country. And I've been in the US ever since. And both my sisters now have nieces, as you know, John. That's probably the hardest one that I recognize I sacrifice and still choose to do it in order to chase this dream.
I'm going to come back and ask you a little bit what balance looks like for you now. But another one, like just to push you a bit on something you may or may not have thought of, was economic, because I know you said you didn't really focus on school, but I know you did great in school. Probably if you had gone into business a few years ago, you'd probably be making more money. Is that a fair thing to say?
Probably.
So you're giving up a little bit on the economic side as well, obviously, because even once you start into business, you'll be starting a few steps below where you could be.
Yeah, that's true. So the economic piece is definitely something that's become a lot more important to me in the last few years. I remember signing my Reebok contract, and whatever number was on there, I was signing that piece of paper because to me, I was like, I'm getting paid to run, done deal. And as I've gotten older and, I've had bills, I've had to learn a little bit more about, okay, what's reasonable, understanding the industry of distance running, which isn't the most lucrative sport in the world. What do I need to continue doing this and being comfortable and performing at a high level? With that in mind, when I'm done running, I hope to make more money than I am now. So I guess by that logic, yeah, I would definitely be postponing the economic piece right now.
What does balance look like for you right now? What are some of the things you'd like to incorporate in your life to achieve that?
The biggest one is the balance with my, intimate family, my wife, Hannah, our dogs, just staying present, because running can be, or sports can be pretty inconvenient and distracting in terms of, being a good husband or a good dog owner, because you do have to be selfish and you need to prioritize yourself in training and recovering. But it's important for me to recognize that there's people in my life that I care about, and I need to dedicate my time and energy to them to make them happy, which makes me happy. So that's probably the biggest one, is, really valuing my time spent with Hannah and my family when I am in their physical proximity. Outside that, I like to have a future plan of some sort. A while ago, and I think there's probably true for a lot of athletes in general, my blinders were kind of on for all of these other areas. Now I'm a lot more realistic about my career is going to come to an end. My performance level is going to drop off at some point, and I'm going to no longer add enough value to the brands that are now providing me my income to maintain that relationship and stay as a professional athlete. So I'm trying to prep for the future. And that includes, taking some courses here and there, doing some career exploration or career development opportunities. I'm hoping to have my career through LA 2028. But those are things that help me feel a little bit more in control of that inevitable transition out of sport without making it so abrupt and I guess overwhelming.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a hypothetical, a bit of an unfair question. So here's what I hope happens. I hope you achieve your dream, and later in life, you're looking back and there's grandkids kicking around and you're thinking back and you're saying, wow, that was really worth it. Things have gone well after running, and it was great to give up the stuff I did during running to make it work. So that's one scenario. But I want to ask you about a different one. Let's say that you had used one of those off ramps at a certain point because for whatever reason you thought, no, I got to get on with my life. I need to make more money. I need to do this or do that. And now you're still back up there in the same place around the campfire with your grandkids, and you're looking back. What do you think you might think about having not pursued this as far as you could?
Now, with how close I am, it's something that I feel like I need to accomplish, especially if, that off ramp happened after missing out on Tokyo. It would be hard to look back and feel like I didn't give it a try being that close. Maybe a bit of a different story if it was halfway through college and I was in a point where I didn't know if the Olympics was possible. But at this stage, knowing it's right there and it's such a huge opportunity and it's something that everybody can conceptualize and validate my career, my dedication to the sport, it's something I really want to do. And a lot of it is even just for myself. It's something that I feel like I want to accomplish. And ever since missing that team in Tokyo, I've been more motivated than ever to not miss this Olympics in Paris. So I've been all in on that, and I wouldn't ever want to live with any sort of regret, but it'd be tough to look back and feel like I didn't give it a go.
When we set this interview up, you were about to run a big race, and you needed in that race to hit the Olympic standard. And for people who don't follow running, there's a certain time that the Olympics sets. And if you make that, then it greatly enhances your chance to be picked for an Olympic team. And that would mean shaving off quite a bit of time on your personal best. And here we are later, and congratulations, because you hit that Olympic standard. So that's unbelievable. So now you're really just that whisker of way to being able to go to Paris, and I hope you get there. So assuming you do, and now you're looking back at all these trade-offs you made, I imagine it's all been worth it.
I would say so. Yeah. I'm lucky and I'm privileged because a lot of the reasons I've been able to make these trade-offs is because of the environment I'm in and the support I have from others, right? And other people aren't so lucky. The economic piece we talked about, I mean, a lot of that off-ramp for a lot of people isn't optional, right? And I've been lucky to be able to postpone things to pursue this. And a lot of that comes down to the people that surround me. So yeah, I'm 100% going to think it's worth it. As I've gotten older, I recognize the sacrifices that I'm making now, and similar to the theories you have in your book, there's things I want to dedicate more time to in the future to, I don't know if make up for them is the right way to put it, but at least, express that value that I want to at some point in my life. So yeah, it's not a done deal yet, but it's pretty close, and it's going to feel good if it happens.
I don't really consider it making up. The way I look at it, Ben, is that if you think about this over the course of your lifetime, there's a time for these different things. And right now it's the time to focus on one thing, and later you can focus more on another. But you don't necessarily, in my view, have to do them all at the same time. You just got to bring them in at a certain point. But actually, something you just said gave me some food for thought, because you know that I like to run. And in fact, what you may not know, Ben, is that you and your family are one of the reasons I run, because it was at a time in my life when I was looking for something to do to get back in better physical health and to do something physical, and wasn't sure what exercise to do or what I liked. And between you and your two sisters and your dad, you guys are running all the time. And I thought, maybe I should try that. And I started slow and kind of built my way up. And now it's a huge part of my life. So I really appreciate you inspiring me on that front. When I'm running my fastest, I think it might be like about 3 times slower than you, or you're 3 times faster. But I can't help but wonder, what is it that these guys can do? How in the world do they push out those last 200, 300, 400 meters when they're feeling so painful? And you just mentioned, all the support you get from your family and friends and all that stuff, and sponsors and everybody else. Does that come into your mind in the end? Like, do you feel like you're running for everybody, or is it just more a matter of you're just doing the best you can to keep going?
I would say so. Even more so when those people are physically present at some of these big races. This last race that you mentioned where I was going for the Olympic standard was in Boston, where Hannah's family is from an hour away, and they brought a whole crew of 10, 15 people. I'll be honest, it makes the stakes a lot higher, because especially when people don't fully understand it all, because to them it's like, oh, of course he's going to do it, right? And whereas you're sitting there like, holy shit, I hope I don't screw this up, right? it definitely elevates things to a little bit of a higher stakes, I guess, which, can go both ways, right? Sometimes if that's too overwhelming, it's not productive. But if you can channel it in the right way and use it as motivation, I certainly think it's something that comes to play. I also recognize a lot of the bulk of it is doing it for myself as well, and that's something that I've come to terms with. And I've accepted that, and I feel good about that because it feels like I'm lucky that people understand that in my life, right? Because I guess the reason I think of it that way is because if I stopped running tomorrow, my parents wouldn't care,
Right.
If as long as I told them it's what I want to do, or Hannah certainly wouldn't care as long as I told her it's something I need to do. So at the end of the day, being a successful athlete, to the people who I might be doing it for, they're supporting me unconditionally. So I want to perform well to, I guess, express that gratitude. But it's also a recognition that a lot of this is to fulfill this dream that I have, and that's something that I've come to terms with a lot more recently.
Well, you've got me as one person, and there's thousands of more who are cheering you on and hoping you get to achieve that goal. And then I can't wait to see you running in a Team Canada uniform in the Olympics. So all the best in that. So here we are at the end of the interview, and there's a question we ask every guest, and it surrounds this concept we have about many areas of wellness. But it's impossible for any of us to keep them all going at top speed at any given time. So we ask all our guests a question. It's kind of like a mini wellness check-in. Are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of even one thing that you could do to foster wellness in that area?
I'm debating between spiritual and artistic. And those are things that just don't come naturally to me in general. But as for spiritual, I think I could probably spend a bit more time, I don't know if practicing mindfulness or just practicing being present or before starting my day could be helpful. But sometimes I feel like I'm so focused on the next thing, the next run, the next race, that it sometimes feels like life can just be passing by a bit. And at least the way I interpret spiritual, it'd be nice to kind of stop and think about the big picture of it all.
Yeah, it's interesting because spiritual it's kind of the hardest thing for me to describe in a non-religious way. But I've been working really hard to think of ways to describe it. And I say a little bit about that in my book, and we've talked to people about that. And on the artistic side, it's interesting there because I was thinking about what things are important to me. And so I kind of made up my own list. And I wasn't seeing art on areas of well-being. It is, you are seeing it now, but I wasn't seeing it. But I just realized, like, to me, in a bad mood, what about music bringing me back to life? Or, you know, we love art, like paintings and whatnot. So I think art is a really huge piece of the well-being puzzle too. And I'm glad that people are seeing more and more how it can help.
Yeah,
so
that's interesting. All
right. Well, I know you're out now training and you've just shifted over to Colorado. So you got to get used to the different time and the different altitude. And I hope you do that. And we'll all be cheering you on, Ben, wishing you the best. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much, John. This was great. I appreciate it.
I'm Cameron, and welcome to another installment of the Adventures of the Starving Artist. So a while ago, I had the opportunity to perform metal vocals for the theme song of the Rick and Morty anime series. You might remember that segment. I was really excited about it, and I still am. When it was recorded was ages ago compared to when the actual anime was released. So I had to sort of sit on that and bite my tongue for a long time, and I was so excited when it finally came out. But there's actually some more great news. Just yesterday, I got a message from my friend Yoshi Nakayama, who is on the Berkeley faculty, and I actually went to school with her, and she's the one that facilitated the connection with the studio in Japan for both this particular project and way back. I worked with her to do music for the Starship Troopers franchise in a similar vein, in a similar genre. Anyway, she got in touch with me and wanted to run through a few details to make sure they had the right Spotify page for me and my name right and all that stuff. You know, what's all this for? She says, well, we just got word from Japan that the song is ready to go to distribution. So what that means is not only is it going to be out and about in the world, attached to the cartoon, but now if people are so inclined, they can jump onto Spotify or Apple Music or Tidal or Pandora or Amazon or Google or wherever they listen to stuff, and the song will be in the catalog there for streaming. So that's kind of neat. Just as a point of pride, I get to say, hey, yeah, that's my name right there. And on the professional side, if someone hears it and, they're a studio person or an artist and they like what they hear and they say, who did that? They can see my name right there. So fingers crossed that it leads to some more cool stuff in that vein, because it's really fun. I love recording that style, and especially being able to do it remotely. That's two big wins for me. So that's my big news. I'm really excited about it. I'm not sure exactly when it will be distributed, but within the next few weeks, apparently. So stay tuned for that. I'll let you know when it's coming. But for now, we can just be ready for it and enjoy the anticipation. Get excited. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
We're glad you're here, and we hope you're making wellness a priority. Hope you're getting something out of the podcast. And especially for people who are new, you might not know that the podcast was inspired by my book, Accidentally Well by John Webster. It's available on Amazon, Indigo, Barnes & Noble, pretty much anywhere where you can buy books online. And this is my pitch for you to buy a copy and have a read. I think it'll enhance the experience of the podcast, and it will also help us defray some costs because it's really expensive putting out a podcast. So grab a copy if you can, and in the meantime, enjoy the rest of the show.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
Hi, everyone. I'm here with Elise Seifert, and my name is Julie Wilson. How are you doing, Elise?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
Good. So today we are going to talk about 5 tips to help you stay motivated to exercise. We all need that little bit of motivation sometimes. And this was a post from the National Institute on Aging. Exercise is one of those things, help us stay young or feel young, keep moving. So these are just some tips that will help us get out there and want to exercise.
Perfect. Let's start with tip number 1. Tip number 1 says, find ways to fit exercise into your day. You are more likely to get moving if exercise is a convenient part of your day.
Number 2, do activities you enjoy to make it more fun. Be creative and try something new.
Number 3, make it social. Find a virtual exercise buddy to help keep you going and provide emotional support.
And number 4, if there's a break in your routine, get back on track. Start slowly and gradually build back up to your previous level of activity. Ask your family and friends for support.
Finally, number 5, keep track of your progress. Make an exercise plan and don't forget to reward yourself when you reach your goals.
Those are great tips. And I love the one in particular about be creative and try something new. Friends will often suggest, oh, do you want to come and try X? And for example, during COVID, one of the exercises that a friend of mine I had never done before, she was like, why don't you come try paddleboarding? And I found out I love it.
Amazing.
What about you?
I think that number 5, track your progress, is something that really is effective for me. I know that I use a smartwatch in order to track my exercise progress. And I love to see different goals that I'm hitting, like heart rate goals or exercise time or step goals. For whatever reason, I love that achievement-based exercise motivation. So that's one that works really well for me.
Do you typically exercise with someone?
No, I don't. I usually exercise by myself, but I know I have gone and exercised with friends before, and it's a lot of fun and it keeps you on track. You know, if you have an appointment to exercise with a friend or family or whoever, you know you're going to go because you've made that commitment. So I do find it's a very motivating reason to exercise if you have an exercise buddy.
And that could be, I noticed they talk about a virtual exercise buddy. So it could even be an app or even listening to music. I think that's what maybe they're getting at by that virtual exercise buddy. Just those constant reminders. If you do download an app that, okay, exercise time. So I think those might help. I've never personally used something like that, but I could see how it might be helpful as well.
I know that I use a website called Obey, and I absolutely love it. They do a great job at making it feel like you're exercising with other people when you are just exercising by yourself.
Cool.
So they have live classes, and when you tune in, they'll give you a shout out. And sometimes throughout the class, they'll shout out and kind of say things like, let's keep going, you can do this. And they'll call you out by name, which makes you feel like you're more involved in the class when you may not have an opportunity to visit a live facility to take such a class. So I really like that. And they also use that tracking progress program by letting you know how many classes you've taken each week or how many classes you've taken total. And they send you some fun emails once you reach certain achievement goals. So it helps to keep you motivated. So there are some incredible apps and incredible websites that can help you with those goals.
And I think that's an important topic that maybe we'll chat about on another session, but not only motivating factors to help you start exercise or get moving, but also the motivation during exercise. You talked about those prompts and those shout outs. I think that is equally important. And maybe we can talk about that on another session.
I would love that.
There's a thought. Popped up while running. There's a line from M.L. Stedman's book, The Light Between Oceans, that keeps popping into my head. It just so captured something that I felt. I'm not going to get it right because I read this a while back. But essentially what the lead character said was, and he was a guy who had just come out of World War I. He was a pretty pensive person, thoughtful. I can relate to some of that. One thing about me is I think I have control. I think I know what I like. I think I'm understanding what's happening around me. I'm pretty good at predicting things like in mysteries, whodunit, and in TV shows, what's going to happen. And probably I like it that way, when I feel like I'm in control. So the character meets this woman who he's attracted to. He would say something and she would say something he didn't expect, or he would do something and she would do something he didn't expect. He thought it was really interesting that she had this habit of being able to just kind of knock him off balance. Just this little knock that would put him off balance because of something she did. That's the same with Sheila. And also, for sure, I cannot predict what she's going to do. The other thing, too, is she's kind of mischievous at times. So I can tell that she says something and I take it the wrong way. And then I look and she's got that glint in her eye. And she did it just because she wanted to just kind of knock me just a little bit off balance, or she just wanted to get some kind of reaction. In the end, I think that's great for a relationship. You want to have that person that knocks you a bit off balance, good-hearted mischievousness. It's all fun. It's me.
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
Okay, so here's an experience that we wanted to present to you guys. It was New Year's Eve, and John and I were walking downtown. So it's about a half-hour walk. And I think we have told you about this before.
50 minutes.
It's a 50-minute walk. And it was cold and snowy. It was actually lovely. So we're walking and we're downtown and we're passing a restaurant. And we see a waitress running out in clothes. She's not in any winter clothes.
It was really cold.
Really cold. And she's running probably a block or two to chase someone.
And I thought, by the way, that someone forgot their wallet or something.
Yeah.
That she was being nice and saying, hey, sir. I'm like, wow, what a nice person.
Yeah. She's running after this person. She catches up to them and she starts talking to them. And you could tell it's a little bit of an argument.
They were across the street and about, I don't know, maybe 100 yards away. So we couldn't really tell what was happening.
No. And she basically was asking him to pay his bill. He walked out on his bill and he just kind of looked at her and was saying stuff and then turned and kept walking.
He just sloughed her off.
Just totally sloughed her off in the middle of the street. And now I don't know if everyone knows this, but when a waitress or a waiter gets stiffed by a bill, they're the ones that have to pay it.
A lot of restaurants make the waitress or waiter pay it.
Yeah. Because
or bartender.
Yeah. Because if they don't, then It's
just like, hey, you sold this, you owe us money, give us money.
Yeah. So this would come out of the waitress's tips, which is a large amount of her tips.
Now, that was our experience, so we assume it was hers. We don't know that.
It was just a horrible thing happening on New Year's Eve.
And I yelled, so I yelled across the street, did he walk out on his bill? And she said yes. And she looked really dejected. And so I did have half of mine. Now I feel bad, right?
Yeah.
What should I do as Joe Citizen?
Yeah.
I know he's not going to give me money if I go up to him. Part of me almost wanted me to go over and pay the bill.
I know, me too. I was like, well, why don't we go and pay the bill?
Yeah, and I'm guilty that I didn't do something and say, look, how much was the bill, and give her $20 or something, just because it's not fair, right?
It's not fair.
So I was still thinking, and we happened to be walking in the same direction as him. He was across the street. And I was seriously thinking of following him.
Well, we were trying to catch up to him, but he was definitely trying to go fast. And then he veered away. Like he was trying to get out of the sight of everyone.
So I don't know what the right thing to do is, but he eventually turned off in a street and I made the decision not to follow him.
No, a little dangerous.
But man, was I frustrated and feeling helpless and feeling guilty. And it's just, why do people do that? It's just so obnoxious.
I was very upset and took it personally. And I don't understand how people seem to think that they can do this. And it's kind of the men. I'm giving it, the men is putting down the men, that they have to pay for it. They think that the big business is going to cover the bill. Or
do you really think that somebody who would stoop that low even cares who pays for it? Like, don't you think they're just like, screw it. I'm just going to eat for free and drink for free. I had a few beers. Not my problem. I don't care who pays for it. I can get it. Because the attitude that she caught the guy.
Yeah.
And his attitude was like, who cares? You can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Because usually in those situations, at least in my experience, is that you have a few tables and you don't realize that they've gone until it's too late. By the time you realize they're gone, they're literally gone, long gone. And that's usually how they do it. They escape quickly and run. Where this guy had no remorse at all. He's like,
I almost felt like the reason I wanted to follow him, I wasn't going to confront him, but I thought maybe I could get a picture of him or something and, just give it to the restaurants downtown. This guy walks out on bills flagrantly. But again, I didn't do anything.
Yeah, I didn't know what to do. And then by the time we're pondering it and we're past the restaurant and still thinking about it, and I just felt so bad and thought it was an experience that we could bring up on here. And
if you're out there listening, the waitress who got the walkout, or if you've ever been a waitress who got a walkout, we feel for you. And we've both been through it too. Like, I personally had people walk out at me as a bartender.
Yep.
Sheila's personally had people walk out on her. Mm-hmm. And these aren't the people, like those days when we were working in restaurants, like that's how I bought food.
Of course.
I was living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, I don't think that many people who work in that industry are, making tons of money. I mean, you make pretty good money and you have good days and bad days. But even making good money, it's more of a subsistence living than definitely,
especially if you're paying for school and that kind of thing. There's not leftover money.
No, and it's
so somebody steals $40 from you. That's
50% of your.
That's my
tips.
Meals for a few days.
Yeah,
at home.
And not only that, but a lot of these people. A lot of people who work in restaurants are going to school, like you said. They are doing all these other jobs, and it's a difficult job. It's not an easy job to do. You're on your feet, you're moving, you are in a hurry. There's a lot of pressure in a lot of different areas, from management, from the bar, from the kitchen. You have a lot going on, and then the customers and stuff. So it's a stressful job. And to have something like that happen on New Year's Eve, New Year's Eve to me in the industry is a happy day and this is going to be a good day to work and you'll make good money, and that happens.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
It's sign-off time. It's Elise, and I'm here with John and Sheila.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, I hope everyone had a restful family day weekend. I know that I really enjoyed an extra day in my weekend this past week. It was a really busy work week. I've been keeping up with my exercise routine, And I thought it was really interesting in last week's episode, Ellen Winters mentioned that she'd been doing some somatic exercise sessions. And that's something that's been integrated in the workout program I've been doing. And I had never really heard of it, but I had a lot of fun with it this week. It kind of reminds me of improvised dancing. So in our session, we would just move our body to make it feel big and then small, and then move the right side of your body, move the left side of your body, lead from different parts of your body. And it makes me really excited that this is something that's become popular because I absolutely love doing this in dance class.
Yeah, we do it all the time.
Yeah, I never knew what it was. I still not sure what it is, but I'm going to look into it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So I thought that was really interesting that she's into it as well. And it's become kind of a mainstream form of movement. How about you, Sheila? What's going on with you?
Well, I did 2 things this week that I haven't done in a long time. One was curl. I went curling at a bomb spiel. I was just kind of popping in as a replacement. Did that. And that was fun. My arms are actually sore. I thought my legs would be sore, but my arms are sore from sweeping so much. And I also drove to Toronto. So that I took John's mom into Toronto to visit a friend, and we went on Thursday, and it just happened to be a snowstorm. So we had the snow dropping in Toronto, and we were like, we got to go. It took us 3 hours to get home.
Ugh.
Yeah, but it was interesting because I was in Toronto and people were like, whoa, the snow. And they were going out and taking pictures and doing all these things. And I guess it doesn't snow that much in Toronto. So that was interesting. And just as a note, only in Ontario do we get Family Day weekend. It's not all of Canada. So we are lucky that we get to have a long weekend. And I'm really looking forward to enjoying it. What about you, John?
I think they just made it up. They said, we need February, you get kind of the blahs. We need to have a holiday in February. And so they made up Family Day, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole time Sheila was sitting in traffic those 3 hours, I felt terrible sitting comfortably at home, relaxing and chilling and doing whatever I wanted. But boy, I really felt for you, Shills. As usual, I had a really busy work week, but I want to just turn a little bit to the treadmill again. I've been working to get back on the treadmill. This week, I actually had 2 amazing treadmill runs, something I never thought I'd say. But one of my interval sessions worked perfectly, and I felt comfortable the whole time. And then I had to do a 10K again on the weekend because it was slippery and snowy outside. And that was just a breeze. So I think I'm finally back to my body being used to the treadmill. So that's great. And I heard a really great challenge this year. I was talking to someone on the phone and it turned out we both liked running. He said he does this challenge, which I think is fantastic. And the idea is every year you run 10 kilometers and you try and target your age in minutes as your finish time. And so if you're 35, you'd have to do a 35-minute 10K really hard. You'd have to be like super elite. If you're 65, though, he said, if you can do a 65-minute when you're 65, you're actually still pretty elite. My running speed is kind of around that. When I do my long, easy runs, I'm slower by a few minutes than my age. So that gave me a target. I think I'm going to try and do that. I'm figuring out what I need to do on the treadmill, what average speed I need to do it. And I think I will give that a shot. And one last thing, we're sitting here in the new podcast studio again. We moved from the basement to a bedroom that's no longer a bedroom. And we're going to do a little tinkering to try and get the sound going a little better, but it's still pretty cool and pretty bright up here. It feels like we're actually in a regular room instead of the dungeon.
Yeah, it's really lovely. And everything's already set up pretty much. So we don't have a lot of moving things around in order to get going. So that's really great.
Even with our sign-offs, we used to have to move the mics all over the place so that Elise could see both of us on Zoom. But now we can just sit in our spots and it's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Okay, anybody else got anything else?
Nope.
Nope, that's it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed the podcast. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch up with you next week. That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.